So we're going to move forward today talking about mental health, and I got to find, there you go. And yeah, please post your questions. I see Susie B is already posting some questions and everyone can hear me. Great, great, great news. I need a sip of coffee. Okie doke. So what type of mental health issues are covered by workers' compensation, and can something like stress from a hostile work environment qualify? So, you know, a mental health case, psychological, psychiatric disabilities, those types of cases nowadays are handled just like any other injury case. Back in the day, I forget when the switch, it was probably the year 2000, give or take. Workers' compensation historically back then, before that period of time, in order to have a psychological injury, there must have been a physical manifestation of your psychological injury. So if you had stress, PTSD, anxiety, you name it, just having that condition was not enough. You had to have a physical manifestation, hair loss, shingles. You had to have some physical occurrence to support that the psychological injury was there. You couldn't have a solely a psych injury back then, but that has changed. Now you can have a psychological injury in and of itself on its own, and you can pursue a claim for that. So, and they're handled just like any other injury claim. You can have a psychological disability that stems from an occurrence. So, you know, I don't want to get too personal with examples, but we had a person who was a field technician who was making a call to an apartment building, and he walked up on a crime that was happening in a stairwell, and experiencing that while he was going to do work at a job site gave him, I believe he had PTSD, and we pursued that claim. So simply, you know, you can have an accidental occurrence that leads to a psychological injury. You can also have an occupational repetitive stress taking on a different tenor here. It's not the stress of a physical injury like typing or something like that, but you can actually have physical stress, emotional stress, which results from a repetitive stress type of scenario, like a hostile work environment. But more often than not, we do see this the psychological claims that pop up on their own. They do happen. They're rare. More often than not, a psychological claim is usually a secondary component, a consequential injury to an underlying accident or injury. And that's where we see them more frequently. So we've spoken about it in the past, consequential injuries. The consequential injury, you broke your leg, you tore your ACL in your knee, and you're walking around, you're hobbling on a bad knee. And because you're hobbling on a bad knee and you're overcompensating on the good knee starts to hurt. That's a consequential injury. You're walking around with a bad knee and your back starts to hurt. Consequential injury. Well, you're walking around with all these problems and you start having psychological issues. That also is a consequential injury. So we see that happen a lot as a consequential injury, and it also happens as a direct injury. People are involved in some pretty traumatic accidents, and having an accident that's you know, can cause psychological issues. You know, it happens all the time. PTSD, anxiety, major depressive disorder, depressed mood. There's a whole wide variety of different psychological diagnoses, which we see on a daily basis. I know my eye looks bad. I'm sorry. I'm getting better though, day by day. So yes, absolutely. You can have a psychological claim where that's your only claim. But we do see it happen more often where it's a component to a larger claim and a larger set of accident and injury circumstances. I see some questions coming in here, and I'm certainly going to get to those questions because I love you guys and I love your questions that you ask. Let me just roll through a couple issues here. So, what are the requirements to get psychological issues covered by workers' compensation? Does it have to be tied to a physical injury? How do you prove your case? I guess I over-prepped myself and because we just discussed this. So yeah, it no longer has to be tied to a physical injury, but more often than not it is. But again, hostile work environment, we had a case, man. The ultimate outcome of the case is questionable because things went different places, and but we had a claim years ago where a person was working for a company and had uh, problems with his supervisor. They had disagreements, differences of opinion, and he ultimately filed some complaints. And in the midst of the hearing processes for looking into these complaints, it got tense, it got hostile again, and this gentleman uh, suffered a heart attack. So again, it's not a psychological claim, but you could see how those types of hostile work environments and tense scenarios um, can lead to problems, physical and psychological. And he also, I believe, had a psychological claim, psychological component to that claim as well. So it is certainly very feasible, happens all the time. And there are very good doctors out there that handle psychological claims. Now, again, we use the term psych. It's a generic term. It's a throwaway term. It could mean a lot of different things. Just so we're clear here, there's psychologists and there's psychiatrists. Not everyone knows the difference. It's important to distinguish. A psychologist is not a medical doctor. A psychologist is usually a PhD. A psychologist generally provides cognitive behavioral therapy. They give you therapy. The psychologist generally is the doctor you sit down and you have the discussion with and you tell your feelings to, and that's the one that you have those types of therapy sessions with. A psychiatrist, the psychiatrist is usually the medical doctor. The psychiatrist is the one that prescribes medication, generally speaking. So, in circumstances with significant psychological injuries, it is sometimes, it can be very common for a person to see a psychologist and a psychiatrist for different types of mental therapy and maintenance of your psychological or psychiatric condition. So, I want to make sure that that's clear. I'm getting emails and they're making me crazy here. So there we go. Okay, we're back. There we go. So I want to make sure that distinction that's there and people understand the difference. Psychology, therapy, that's the talking to doctor. Psychiatry is the medical doctor. That's the medication. And you could have a diagnosed disability from either one, and you could also see both. So how do you prove a psychological or psychiatric injury? Well, if it's tied to the physical injury, if it's tied to an accident, a horrible car accident, and your doctor is saying that you have PTSD, it's a lot easier. It's pretty straightforward there. You didn't have a past significant psychological history or psychiatric history. You have an accident, and now you have PTSD. You have a diagnosed psychiatric or psychological disability that is directly tied to an underlying accident. Those are pretty straightforward. There's always a concern with the insurance company as to whether or not a person's malingering, stretching their symptoms, faking it. That's always the big fear with the insurance companies, and they always don't always give you the benefit of the doubt when you're claiming a psychological or psychiatric injury. But it's certainly there, and we handle those claims all the time. If it's not tied to an actual physical injury or disability, you still pursue it the same way. If you have symptoms and you need to see a doctor, you go see a doctor. If it's a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and the doctor files medical reports, just like if you broke your arm or you got into a car accident. And if that doctor is able to diagnose your disability and offer an opinion on causal relationship, that's what we use to prosecute your claim and to ultimately get your case established and get those injuries included in your claim and get your medical paid for. So it's handled the same way as a physical injury case, an accident case, even an occupational case, if that's the type of claim that you're bringing. No longer do we have to distinguish psych from physical. They're handled just about the same way, but they can be a little bit more difficult because they're a little harder to prove. You don't see a psychological injury all the time. You do see a person who just had a broken arm and their arm's in a cast. So, Can mental health issues after your accident be considered a consequential injuries? And what if you become depressed from sitting at home unable to work? Great, great, great question. I'm glad I asked myself that one. And can mental health issues after your accident? Yes, this is exactly what we see a lot. Consequential, and can be sitting at home unable to work cause a psychological injury, or can it cause a worsening of a psychological injury? Both are true. When we're deposing especially insurance company psychologists and psychiatrists, it's a question I frequently ask them. Can being out of work exacerbate an underlying psychiatric disability? So even if you had an underlying problem, even if you were seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist for other issues in the past before your accident, and you do have an accident and you're unable to work and you're home dealing with your injuries, can that make your underlying condition worse? I mean, it depends on the circumstance and depends on the underlying claimed disability, but it certainly is worth asking the question. And yeah, being home being unable to work, being in pain can cause or worsen a psychological or psychiatric disability. So it absolutely, and that's oftentimes the basis of the consequential nature for these types of claims, and that's why we bring them in. See questions coming in. There's one thing I really want to get to, and this is it. This is the big thing, and then we'll start hitting some questions. Should most injured workers consider getting mental health treatment, and can it increase the value of your case? So I'm never going to tell somebody to go and do something simply to increase the value of your case. You should consider getting mental health treatment if you feel like you need it. And it's funny because this is actually a common question. Should I go see a psychologist? Well, do you think you need to see a psychologist? If you think you need to see somebody, it's very funny how this topic really, people who need it should go get it. And there's people on the far ends of the spectrum. You have people who think, hey, I'm doing A-okay, but I'm going to go see a psychologist because I think it might increase the value of my case. Well, if you think it's going to increase the value of your case, it might do the opposite, because if it turns out that the doctor doesn't find anything really wrong with you and the insurance company doctor doesn't find anything really wrong with you, it's going to show that you're trying to make something out of nothing, and it doesn't look very good. And by the same token, on the other end of the spectrum, there is a stigma, unfortunately, that's attached to getting psychological or psychiatric treatment and having that tag added to you in your case. It's not as bad as it used to be in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but there still is, and there probably will always be some level of stigma attached to a person who has a psychological or a psychiatric disability. And it's for that reason that a lot of people don't like to pursue it. They're afraid. They don't want to be marked with that type of issue. So I tell my clients all the time, though, don't be worried about it. If you need the help, go get the help. Don't be shy. Don't be bashful. Don't worry about it. You need help, go get help. And for all intents and purposes, who's going to know about it? Me, a judge, an insurance company attorney, everyone. Nobody's out there spreading rumors about you. If you need the help, go get the help, and it can't hurt. So it's certainly important to do if you need it. Don't do it just for the sole purpose of trying to increase case value, because, like I said, it could have the opposite effect. It could hurt you when you do stuff like that. That being said, it's very case specific as to how it impacts value and how it impacts what we could do with a case. If you're talking about a guy with a broken arm and a broken leg, schedulable injuries that we've discussed in the past, SLU, schedule injuries, a psychological claim takes that case out of the realm of schedule loss sometimes, unless you go back to work or there's limited lost time. You could take what would otherwise be an SLU type of case and make it into a non-schedulable case if there's a psychological component there or a psychiatric component. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. It could change the face of your case. Sometimes you might want to do that. Sometimes you might not want to do that. So it's something you really need to consider, which is why it's important to have an attorney and to have a doctor, a psychologist or a psychiatrist who understands the New York State workers' compensation system, because adding a psychological or non-SLU component to a case that's otherwise an SLU type of case can really change things. That's why it's so important to have a good attorney. I know a good attorney. He has a bad eye right now, but he's still a good attorney. 212-406-8989. You could always give me a call. and I'm happy to speak with all of my loyal followers. I'm going to hit a couple questions today. I am going to be a little quick because I'm still trying to deal with this eye issue, and it's just the end of the day is rough. The end of the days get rough for me because it's tough. The one eye doesn't want to work very well. But let's see what Susie B has to say. Can you talk about the appeals process? How long it takes to get a decision? Also, can it go on indefinitely with no positive outcome? It seems like employers can just run the clock. Okay, that's a very good question. And I can't give you a very direct answer because I simply don't know. From what we're told, appeals, when a case gets appealed, it gets sent up to Albany to the board panel. We've discussed the structure of the board and where appeals go. When a judge makes a decision and it gets appealed, it gets appealed to the board panel. So the Workers' Compensation Board is made up of a whole bunch of commissioners, and they sit up in Albany, and they are the commissioners of the Workers' Compensation Board. There's supposed to be a set number of them. I don't know if it's 18 or 20 or 24 or what, but that number fluctuates as they come and go. But when an appeal from a judge's decision, gets sent up, it goes to the board panel. And the board panel is a panel of 3 commissioners who review the appeal and make a decision. From the board panel, you can ask for full board review. Full board review can be discretionary, or it can be mandatory. If there is a dissent on a board panel review or the first level of appeal, if one of the 3 judges dissents or disagrees, you have a mandatory basis for mandatory full board review. If they don't dissent, if they all agree, generally speaking, there's some intricacies to this rule, but generally speaking, if they all agree, you can apply for discretionary full board review, and you're basically telling the full board, hey, I don't agree with what the board panel said. I'd like everyone to weigh in on this and get a decision from the full board, and they can accept to hear your appeal. They can deny it, and while that's happening, if you choose, you can also bring your appeal over to the 3rd department, where you're taking it out of the Workers' Compensation Board and you're moving it into the New York State court system. I know we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. Not only, I know not everybody was always logged in, but yeah, you can take that appeal now out of the Workers' Compensation system and move it to the New York State court system, the appellate system, and the 3rd department appellate division. Those are the ones who hear all appeals that are moved into the New York State court system. Excuse me. It's the mid-level of courts in New York State. And I know we described this last time we talked about it. In New York State, the Supreme Court is the lowest level of trial court in New York State. We hear the term Supreme Court and we think the highest court in the land, that's the United States Supreme Court, where New York is backwards. The Supreme Court in New York State is the lowest level of court. It's the trial level. It's the first level of court in the New York State system. And if an appeal is taken from the Supreme Court, it goes to the appellate division, and that is the middle. So here, when you're taking a workers' compensation appeal out and you're moving it to the New York State court system, it goes to the 3rd department. The appellate division has different departments all around New York State. It goes to the 3rd department. They hear all workers' compensation appeals. And if you want to appeal further, it goes to the New York State Court of Appeals. The New York State Court of Appeals in New York State is the same as the United States Supreme Court. It's the highest court in New York State. So it doesn't sound as fancy as Supreme Court, but the Court of Appeals is the highest level. Now, how long does that take? I don't know. We're basically told that it's a first come, first serve type of thing where the appeal, you write it, it gets sent up to Albany, and it gets put on the pile, and they take them as they come in, and they handle them one at a time. But I could say that I've noticed that the more, I don't want to say confusing, but the more difficult, the more intricate, the more whatever you want to call it, issues sometimes take a longer time. The basic, we don't, the judge found a 10% loss of use and we think it's a 20% loss of use. Those usually happen pretty quickly in terms of how long it takes to get the turnover on an appeal. But the more confusing, intricate legal issues take a longer time. So that kind of makes me think that it's not a first come, first serve type of thing. Who knows? But it could take we used to tell clients back 10, 15 years ago that you're looking at a year. And I see here James Maxon is telling me appeals take up to a year. We used to say it takes a year. It could take over a year. It's hard really to say. And, I do think it is somewhat first come, first serve. And, as they receive those appeals, they make decisions on them, because at certain times of the year, they do go a little quicker. But there's really no hard and fast rule. And it's hard to tell you it should take this long. More confusing issues and cases take a longer time. It's the only thing I can say. And that's just me giving you my opinion. We got here Code de Music. Good afternoon, Mr. Rex. Need a workers' comp attorney right at this moment. Well, call me. Coded Music. It's Coded Music. I didn't see your you need an attorney? Call me. 212-406-8989. Like I said, I'm going to be on here for probably another 15, 20 minutes answering questions and finishing up my mental health topic. And then I'm going to sign off because I do need to rest this eye of mine. But if you want to talk, 212-406-8989. Coded Music. Happy to talk to you. Tony D. Do you know how far back they are on the 3 board panel appeals from March 2023 time frame already? Waiting 8-9 months. Do you know what month they are up to? I don't know the answer to that question. We've gotten decisions on appeals that were filed. Here's one right here. This is a decision we received in the last couple days on from a hearing. The hearing decision was November 24th. And we just got that decision now. I had another one here, but I actually put it out for filing. So that one we've been waiting a good little while for. You're waiting from a March 2023 case. This is a November 2023 decision. So, and that one we've been waiting. I mean, March of 2023 is a long time. Call the board. You can call the board. You can ask them for a status. You might not get much information, but it's worth a shot. So it stinks that you're waiting that long. Okay. Can comp hold a pre-existing psych status against status following TBI from a fall? TBI, folks, what's TBI? Traumatic brain injury. Can comp hold a pre-existing psych status against status following a TBI from a fall? Changing status following, you're using the word status a lot. I'm getting confused, but I understand that the basic premise of your question. Can they use a pre-existing condition against you? Yes, they can. And yes, they will. I can guarantee you they will. Insurance companies are going to do everything they can to reduce your benefits. So if you have a pre-existing psychological condition and you have a fall and you suffer a traumatic brain injury and that psychological condition worsens or changes or manifests into something different, they're certainly going to try to use your pre-existing condition against you. But hopefully you were seeing a doctor and your pre-existing condition is well documented and your post-accident condition is also well documented, and your doctor can really explain the difference and perhaps the worsening in your condition, things of that nature. But yes, they are going to try to use it against you the same way. If I had shoulder surgery 15 years ago and hurt my shoulder again 2 years ago and filed the claim, they're going to use my past medical history to mitigate, to reduce the amount that they would be responsible for here. James Maxon also just posted another comment. I'm not gonna publicize it, but I don't disagree with what you're saying. Funny guy, James. So yes, pre-existing psychological and psychiatric conditions can be used against you the same way physical injuries can be used against you. Okay. So I'm going to just jump back over here. What if you get cleared to return to work with a psychological or psychiatric condition, but you're not psychologically ready to return? So is there any way to stay on workers' compensation until you're ready? So again, we don't differentiate psych versus non-psych. We don't differentiate mental versus physical anymore. A disability and an injury is a disability and an injury. So if you hurt your head, neck, back, and left shoulder, and your orthopedic and your chiropractor and your surgeon all say that your head, neck, back, and right shoulder are all better and they clear you to physically return to work, but your psychologist says that you're not ready, that's the same thing as your back doctor saying you're not ready, or one of your doctors that's treating one of your injuries saying you're not ready, and you are still you still have the right to follow your doctor's instructions, just as long as it's well documented and we have the medical. They're going to try to push you. The board's going to try to push you too. They're going to try to show that they try to make light of psychological conditions and make it seem like it's not the same. It's not as severe as a physical injury and a physical disability. But I'm sorry, I'm dry and my hands are like on fire. But you follow your doctor's instructions and you do what your doctor tells you to do, and you don't go back to work until your doctor clears you. Or sometimes, you might have to, if litigation has ensued and the judge has found you'd have a partial disability and work search and all that kind of stuff becomes an issue. But generally speaking, you follow your psychologist or your psychiatrist instructions the same way you'd follow your orthopedic or your chiropractor's instructions, and you don't go back till you're ready. Okay. Felicia, I started experiencing incontinence about a week after having a significant fall at work, and it got increasingly worse and took months for an available appointment with a urologist. Insurance denied the bill. Prior to the fall, I'd never experienced this. Would this be considered a consequential injury? So, couple points I want to discuss here. You need to first determine from your doctor if this condition, is a standalone disability that you're claiming, or is it part of a bigger injury, a bigger picture item. And the reason why I say that is because incontinence, and I know folks, sometimes we talk about things that we don't want to be talking about, but this is part of life. Incontinence, bowel and bladder dysfunction sometimes are the result of lumbar spinal pathology. If you have a very bad injury to your low back, you can develop bowel and bladder and sexual dysfunction. It's just, part of the wiring and the plumbing down there is all tied together. And if you have a very bad low back problem, sometimes you have problems with those other areas. So if you're having these problems, talk to your doctors, make sure it's not part of a bigger picture. Did you hurt your back in this accident as well? Or is this a standalone type of condition that you're suffering from that requires help? You said you had a significant fall at work. So, did you hurt your back in that fall? If you did, it might be part of that back injury. Talk to your doctor. But if it's part of that, then you pursue it that way. If it's a standalone disability, you can still see your doctor. It's very difficult because you're going to go see a doctor. There's very few urologists that have people who walk in off the street claiming a workers' comp injury. Usually when they get there, they've been referred through 15 different doctors and been treated for a while because it's part of a bigger injury, like a back injury. So if you're walking in new, they want to make sure they get paid. And this is a big issue that we run into all the time. The doctor's going to say, well, okay, you got hurt at work. Who's your insurance company? Oh, that's your insurance company. Let me call them up. And they call your insurance company. They say, hey, Felicia GP is here, and she's claiming that she has incontinence as a result of a work-related accident. We're going to treat her. Okay. They're going to say, no, we're not accepting that disability, that injury. No, we're not. We're denying that. You're not going to get paid. And then the doctor turns around and says, well, if we're not getting paid, we're not going to see you. And they send you on your way. Well, as your lawyer, it's difficult for me to pursue that claim until I have a medical report that shows that you have this problem. So we can't, if I can go to the judge and say, Judge, we're claiming work-related, culture-related incontinence. And the judge is going to say, great, let me see the medical on it. I'm going to say, well, there's no medical because they keep sending her home because the carrier keeps denying it. It's a vicious cycle, and we need to break that cycle. A doctor needs to see you and write that report so we can pursue the claim. But again, it sounds like there's a very strong possibility this might be part of a bigger issue. So I would absolutely have a sit down with my doctor, talk about what's going on, because bowel and bladder and sexual dysfunction can result from significant spinal pathology, back injuries. Good luck to you, Felicia. If you need any help with this and you want to give me a call and go over it, I know it's not a topic you want to be publicizing too much on the The internet. Yep, there she goes. Yes, both lumbar, neck, and hip. So yeah, you might not want to talk about too much on the internet. If you want to give me a call, 212-406-8989. I wish you the best. I'm sorry that you're having these problems. Juice 91. Hey Rex, love your stuff. Current left leg and left arm both have had surgeries, developed CRPS. So we've talked about CRPS in the past, complex regional pain syndrome, also known as RSD, reflex sympathetic dystrophy. If you want to read about a very interesting and horrible type of disability, Google that. Google CRPS and read about it, because it's freaky that stuff like this can go on in your body because of an accident. And I'm sorry that you're dealing with it. It's a horrible, horrible thing. So he had left leg, left arm surgeries, developed complex regional pain syndrome in both. Just had his first pain management appointment today, starting with meds, talking about a nerve stimulator, probably a spinal cord stimulator, I think your doctor's talking about. And I'm a good candidate. What does my case sound like to you? I have also been using a physiatrist. So, it sounds like you're getting the treatment that you need. I've certainly heard of, and I'm not a doctor, I don't want to be giving medical advice here, but people with complex regional pain syndrome sometimes get spinal cord stimulators implanted to help with that condition. It's a very controversial type of disability. There are doctors that say the best way to treat it is to not treat it at all, because treating it only makes it worse. There's doctors that say the spinal cord stimulator helps. You got to go with a doctor you're comfortable with, get the explanation, and move forward, being fully apprised of the situation. I can't give you much information there, but in terms of how does your case look from a legal perspective, if these are established sites of injuries and you had a high average weekly wage, from your picture and your dog, it looks like you're pretty young. So first off, we always want to try to get better and get back to work, especially when you're a young person. But hopefully your lawyer is getting you, the maximum amount of benefits you can get. And if it's not a very severe lifelong injury and they can get you some money and get you back to work, that's the best outcome. If it does turn out to be something severe, significant, that's going to be with you for the rest of your life, I hope you try to get a hold of that, because complex regional pain syndrome is bad, bad news. Just a couple more questions here. What do we got here? Herman. Hi, Rex. I had a work injury 3 years ago, 2 surgeries on my knee, PT, other treatments, depression, panic attack disorder, and synovitis was added. Would I get a good settlement? I'm tired of workers' comp. I'm tired of workers' compensation too. Definitely sounds like you have the mixed bag here. You have schedulable injuries, non-schedulable injuries. And like we talked about last time, are you working? Are you working or you're not working? That's really the big question to start off with. If you're working, then the psych doesn't play much of a role. It's the same as having a neck injury or a back injury or a head injury. If you're back at work and you're back at work at full duty, or you're earning the same or more than you were earning when you had the accident, unfortunately, it doesn't play into it too much. It does play some role, but you're looking more at schedulable injuries for value. If you're out of work, then that does play a more significant role. Talk to your lawyer. This is the type of thing, especially now, you've been injured now for 3 years, you had 2 surgeries. Now's the time to sit down with your lawyer and say, hey, what if we go the settlement route? What if we go the SLU route and I go back to work? Now's the time to really figure out what your options are and do what's best for you. So talk to your lawyer, make an appointment to speak with your lawyer. It's remarkable. And I've said this 100 times before, and it's crazy how it still pops up. But how many people just don't make that appointment to sit down and talk to their lawyer? And it's even, I see with my clients too, where I call them up and I say, hey, the insurance company is making an offer. They're asking if you're interested in settling. Why don't you come on in? Let's sit down and go over things. Oh, I don't want to come all the way to the city. Well, I have 87 subways that run literally a block past my office. I couldn't make it any easier for you. I pay a shit ton of rent just to be in a convenient area. Come on in. Let's sit down. We got new furniture. They're comfortable. There's no, whatever. Just come on in. Take that opportunity to speak to your lawyer about your case. Get an understanding. Help formulate a plan that's best for you. You have somebody here who's going to tailor make a plan to help you move on with your life. Take advantage of that. And You sound like you're right in that ballpark there. Call your lawyer, make an appointment, and speak to them. If you don't have one and you want to speak to me, you can call me, 212-406-8989. Lucky Trey. Lucky Trey is going to tell me about something that made him unlucky. I fell off a 5-foot deck at work. How did I know? And I got an MRI. I got lumbar radiculopathy. Radiculopathy is when you have a low back injury. Where's my spine? Who stole my spine? Lumbar radiculopathy was when the low back down here somewhere hurts, and it causes radiating symptoms, shooting down your legs. Sciatica is a word you might have heard. That's a radicular symptoms. I got approved for workers' compensation, but they just want to settle. Do you think they will cut me a big check? I hope they cut you a big check. But there's a lot of factors here. If you want to go over them, give me a call. Give me a call, 212-406-8989. I'd have to ask you a bunch of questions to see what your what you could expect here. Herman is telling me he's not working. So if you're not working, this is going back to his question before about 3 years and all sorts of things. If you're not working with those types of injuries, you're looking at a non-schedule, permanent partial disability type of circumstance. And again, I would absolutely speak with my lawyer and try to figure out the best way to maximize your permanency and either get that finding locked in, either whether it's a stipulation or go pursuing litigation or just doing a Section 32 type of settlement, getting as big a check as you can get and moving on with your life. Big checks what people want, right? Lucky Trey, it's all about the big check. I'm mocking it, but it's true. And I love that you guys are you're supporting each other. That's what we need. And thanks for helping you. Thanks for you guys are helping me as much as I'm helping you. I love having you, and you let me do something I love to do, and that's helping people in these circumstances. I love my job, and I'm happy I can help. Last one here. We're going to take this last one, and we're going to call it a day. Divine Creations. Hey, I had an injury at work that ended in a knee replacement. Haven't gotten the replacement yet. What do you recommend? So you're going to need a knee replacement, but you haven't gotten it yet. I would need a little more information. Are you waiting? So a lot of times with knee replacements, shoulder replacements, but usually knee is the big one. People who are recommended for, we call it TKR, total knee replacement. If you're recommended for a knee replacement, there's a lot of people that say, my doctor says I need to replace. I know I need to replace, but I'm going to hold on as long as I can before I get this thing done because it's a nightmare surgery. Well, first of all, I could tell you, my father had knee replacement. I've known many people have had knee replacements. It's not as bad as it used to be. Total knee replacement used to be an hour long, multiple hour long type of surgery. Now I know orthopedists that do like 2 or 3 in the morning and then go out to lunch. The surgery itself is not as invasive. I don't want to say invasive. They're going into your knee and taking out your knee, but it's the turnaround is quicker. The surgery itself is quicker. The recovery is quicker. It's remarkable that what they're doing now. So it's certainly worth you don't necessarily have to wait. People are putting themselves through agony trying to hold off, thinking the surgery is going to be such a terrible thing. It's not. I see. All right. So talk to your doctor about what to expect from the knee replacement if that's what you're doing. Like I said, a lot of people say, I'm going to wait as long as I can, wait as long as I can. It's not necessarily the right thing to do. But I understand why a lot of people do that. So feel free. When it comes to medical questions here, thank you. So Divine is saying, doctor says I need a knee replacement. I'll also be off for about 9 months. Insurance companies offering 52 grand. I don't know if $52,000 is going to cover a knee replacement that you're going to need at some point down the road. You got to factor that in. 9 months. Talk to your doctor and get a little more information. 9 months might be the length of time it takes from beginning to absolute end. But I've seen people get back to work within a matter of weeks after a knee replacement. So talk to your doctor. Hey, doc, if we do the surgery right around New Year's, when can I expect to start getting back to work at light duty? He might tell you go back after a month. So you never know. Sai, my good friend Sai, is saying, and this goes for all you people, don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you like what we're talking about here. And I know Coded Music said, I called the 212 number, was given a consulting time for Monday. Can I reschedule for tomorrow's visit? Sure. you can reschedule for tomorrow's visit. If you left your phone number here, we could call you. Otherwise, just give us a call right back, 212-406-8989. Call me back. We'll get you in tomorrow. I'm pretty sure I'm here all day tomorrow. So we're always happy to help and get you in at your convenience. Stendhal, New York. Can I ask for reimbursement from public transportation after I settle my Section 32? No. Generally speaking, no. Maybe once in a blue moon, your lawyer can call the insurance company and squeeze a few bucks out of them for M&T. That's what we call medical and travel reimbursement. But generally speaking, once your case is closed with a Section 32, it's closed. And asking for M&T doesn't happen. With that, folks, I thank you. You guys are the best. I love each and every one of you, and I appreciate you being here with me and asking these fantastic questions. And I got like 90% through my topic today, so that makes me happy because I did want to discuss psychological and psychiatric disabilities and injuries. As always, if you ever need anything, please call me, 212-406-8989. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays. We got all the holidays coming up. It finally got cold in New York. We had a nice cold snap. The holidays in the city felt like the holidays in the city. So it's fantastic. We took the baby ice skating in Central Park the other day. Oh, what fun. So I love you guys. Thanks. And I will see you next week. Let me double check that. I'm actually going to double check it so I can be a man of my word. The 11th. Woofa. Yep. Next week, we have a couple hearings. We got a lot going on. I'm going to do my best to we're going to do an abbreviated, maybe we'll just do another Q&A next week. I know you guys love the Q&As. So maybe we'll do a 30-minute Q&A next week around 4:30. And that's probably the plan. Sai, write that down. And yeah, after that, the following week, we're good, guys. I got you. I got your back here. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe out there, please. And have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.